Hi, this is Sean from Centric Wealth Advisory. This is a video to go through a retirement planning template. I'm going to break up the template into four separate videos. And the reason for this is because the template itself has four steps for you to go through when you're completing the calculator. And I thought it would just be easier to go through each step on a separate video. Otherwise, it'll be one long video, which some might find to be a bit confusing, but also it is a bit time consuming to have to go through the entire video um, and have to complete the template. So I'm going to do a share screen now. This template you can download and go through the example with me. I'm going to use the same template in terms of the client that I'm using. You can go through the different sections as I go through this video. And then as we go through each of the different steps, you can then just complete um, you can complete the information if you want to play around with it at your own time, or just use the same example that I have provided when I get to that specific step. So I'm going to do a quick share screen now on this particular template. So this template here is available for you to download in Excel. This is the table of contents. These are the four steps, as I've mentioned. The four steps that I'm referring to here is firstly, establishing your retirement goal. Two, inserting your current retirement provisions. Determine how long your funds will last in retirement. And this is across compulsory funds, which is retirement funds, and voluntary funds, which is discretionary, which is non-retirement funds. This is things like unit trusts, endowments, savings, etc. And then we do a combination and blending of funds. And what that basically means is we want to see graphically how does your compulsory and voluntary funds actually pay out at retirement, and how long will the money last based on fund rules. Because with compulsory funds in South Africa, if you go into a living annuity, as an example, you are restricted between a 2.5% and a 17.5% drawdown. You do also get life annuities, but I cannot really put that into this calculator because life annuities are linked to actual life expectancies, and those change on a weekly basis when you get quotations from the various life companies, which therefore means that the rates 20, 30 years from now will be difficult to track because the models change as actuaries do updated mortality tables. Anyway, that being said, I'm going to focus on step one, which is the establishing your retirement goal. So on this section here, I've pre-populated a individual. His name is Joseph. In this case, he's a male. You would be able to choose between male and female. And the reason why you would do that is because there's built-in life expectancy tables over here, which is taken from, so I'm going to show you quickly, 10A5 of the Income Tax Act. So if you were to click on life expectancy, it will basically pull through the equivalent life expectancy for male and female. So you'll see here it says 13.94, and this is for an individual who is 65 years of age. They're expecting to live 13.94 years. If I were to go and change this to female, it would then change to the life expectancy for female. And if you were to go and change the age, it would then recalculate the life expectancy of a female from the age of 60, which is 21.14, and for a male, 17.52. Put it back on 65, put it back on male because Joe is a male. And we're saying Joe is 42. Currently, he's going to be turning 43 in August, which will update automatically. There's a built-in formula that as soon as this goes past the date of birth, it'll update. And obviously, the number of years left to retirement is going to change because it's going to be 65 minus 43, not 42. Over here, 80,000 is the desired income, which annually is 960. And this is what he wants to earn in today's terms at the age of 65. But just want us to remember that the buying power of money has to be factored into the future, which means that 80,000 today will not be the same when Joe is 65, which I'm going to show you what happens when you do factor that in. Escalation retirement is 6%. So we're saying inflation, capital growth, and wealth retirement, excluding fees. We are going to this benchmark on 12. It is basically CPI plus 5. And the reason for that is because you don't have restrictions on regulation 28 in living annuities, and obviously for non-discretionary discretionary money, sorry, that is your voluntary money. There's no Reg 28 because it's not a retirement fund. Inflation 6%, so we're saying in line with the income escalation is the same. Life expectancy is 13.94 years. What I'm actually going to do is I'm going to put in 25 years here, because you can actually have the option of doing mortality tables or putting your own in. So we're saying from 65, this money has to last 25 years. This is really, really, really important, and I'm going to show you why. There's another reason why I'm going to do this video in parts, is because I need to explain to you the math behind retirement planning when you actually set your goals. Because how it really works is you need to have an income goal today. You need to know a date in the future when you want to retire, so we know what long your retirement horizon is, how many years until that date. We need to know what growth rate in retirement you're expecting to achieve, and then last, how long the money is to last. All of this factors into the lump sum that you require. Now, in this case, I've left the initial upfront and ongoing. I can put an ongoing fee in there if I really want to. What that basically does is it'll just calculate the lump sum requirement. I'll first do it without, and then I'll include the ongoing advisory fee, and you'll see how this lump sum changes. But let me just explain this to you so that you understand that any figure you put in. So 80,000 in today's terms has to last for 25 years. But we first need to take 80,000 and adjust it by inflation, so we know what income that Joe needs to be receiving when he is 65. So 80,000 adjusted by 6% between 42 to 65, he needs to have future desired income of 305,580, which is 23 years from now. When Joan turns 43, this will become 22 years, because obviously the time horizon is becoming less. So this 305,580 is the equivalent of 80,000 in today's terms. If inflation was, let's say, 4%, then as you can see, it is a significant difference, 197,177. So this is why inflation is what we call an investment killer, because you need to be able to make provisions for the cost of goods and services 23 years from now. And we work on a target band in South Africa between 4 and 6%. However, the cost really of goods and services in certain areas, let's say, for example, healthcare, your medical aid is not increasing at 4 to 6%. It's more like 8 to 12%. Your cost of insurance, your cost of electricity, certain grocery items are increasing at a much higher rate than 4 to 6%. And that could be due to a number of factors. For example, potatoes in South Africa have grown at an astronomical rate because of the droughts that we've experienced in the last few years. As a result, the farmers now have to carry those costs, pass it on to the consumer, and you then pay that in your retailers, which obviously can impact your monthly budgets. That being said, working on this example, 305,580 is the amount that he starts to receive at 65, and that's going to escalate at 6%, and the money at retirement is growing at 12% per year, which is explained over here, which means that the lump sum he would require, and the calculations actually over here, it's years in retirement. And what we're doing over here is we're taking 305,580 and we're multiplying that by 12, and that's the amount over there. 25 years, how long the money is to last. This is the interest per year, which is the difference between 12 and 6 as a resultant rate calculation over here. And that's escalating at 6%. He would need to have 51,168,910 Rand available from the date of 65 to provide 305,580, escalating at 6% for 25 years. That's how much he needs to have. Now, if I were to go and change the life expectancy, say, to 20 years, I'm going to show you something. So we said it's 51 million. Let's go and change the life expectancy to 20. Sorry, we can say life expectancy because you expected him to live 20 years after 65. That drops to 45 million. Now, the reason why I want to mention this is because we don't have a crystal ball when it comes to how long your money is going, how long you're expecting to live at retirement. So if Joe is 65 and is expecting to live to 85, will 45 million be sufficient? If not, then we need to make provisions and say 25 years instead of 20. This is the difference. Again, if you go and change the income, let's say it was 60,000, that 60,000 will now be adjusted by inflation. That drops to 229. So this section is quite important because this is really setting the expectation for any person trying to plan for retirement. There's only so many variables you can change, and the less time you have to get to your date of retirement in terms of your planning horizon, the more difficult this becomes. Because now, when Joe turns 43, he has 22 years till retirement and not 23. That extra year of compounding can make a difference. So the point being is, if Joe was 22 and trying to replace 80,000, yes, this amount to be bigger because it's going to be compounding over a lot more than 23 years because it's 22 versus 42, but the requirements that he needs to put away per month to do so is going to be a lot easier than it is going to be for Joe, because Joe's only got 23 years to raise 51 million. And this is what you can play around. There's actually a nice little explanation that's pre-built in terms of a formula. I'm going to read it to you now. That's if you weren't 100% sure how this works. This is just basically pulling through information. I'm going to first read this, and I'm going to go and put an ongoing fee and show you how that impacts the calculation. So explanation here. Joe Soap would like to retire at the age of 65 with an income in today's terms of 80,000 per month. With 23 years until retirement and applying inflation of 6%, the income required to have the same buying power at retirement will be 305,580 per month. At the age of 65, the future adjusted income monthly is 305,580 is required to last 25 years until it's fully depleted. So, which means that when Joe is essentially 65, 25, so he'll be 90, then Joe will have no money left when he's 90 years of age. Now, of course, obviously, the problem with that is if Joe has got a long history of family members that are lasting longer than 90, in other words, that died at 95 or 97, whatever, he's got no family history of ailments and things like that, then he could potentially outlive his money. And that's the issue. So that's the first thing one needs to always factor in is, what is the health of the person? What is the family history? Is there cancer in the family? Are there other ailments that could hinder their ability to live longer? Is Joe got diabetes? Has Joe had cancer? Is Joe, these sort of things need to be factored in, because that's unfortunately the reality with retirement planning is how long are you expected to live? If Joe's in good condition, he's a very fit person, no issues whatsoever at 42, then there's a possibility that he could have a very healthy retirement and he needs the funds to last as long as possible. If the income retirement escalates at 6% per year, the capital retirement is expected to grow at 12% compounded annually, then the capital required at 65 will be 51 million over here. So now, if I was to put in a 1%, let's put it a 1% upfront fee in terms of the advisory fee. We now need to factor in the 1%. So just take it off. We need to put in a 1% addition to say here, the upfront fee is added to the future capital growth required. So then when deducted, the starting capital compensate. We don't want to deduct it off. So his starting value is less than what we needed. We need to include the 1% in and then deduct the 1% off to get to that value, because that value is absolutely crucial for this calculation to derive 25 years of income. If you're going to take 1% off, then Joe would unfortunately have how many years of lost income that he would not be able to use. Because remember, you're investing that money at 65, getting 12% compound return. And if you take that away in 1%, okay, it's not a huge difference, if I'm honest, 51,680,000 versus 168. So it's about a 500,000 difference, which, if I'm honest, is not a huge um, impact on the lump sum. If you go put in 0.5 at ongoing advisory fee, what happens is this reduces the growth rate at 12%. Now minus is 0.5 off. And then you can see the impact it'll make on the retirement. So it's 53. So the point is, if you're going to factor in advisory fees and things like that to manage a portfolio, you would obviously need more money to start off so that it doesn't impact your longevity of money. And that's why I've created that extra feature. If you're going to add the two, then obviously the amount's going to be higher. For now, I'm going to leave it off just so I can show you the simple mechanics of how this works. But essentially, you can put in all your information here, male, female, current age. Obviously, it just loads. This is locked because it's based on your date of birth. The reason for this is because there's a formula that will update the age when you go past your date of birth. So every time you log into this template, maybe once a year, you might have gone past your birthday. It'll update this so that you have a more updated calculation. And all these figures will obviously adjust as you get older. You can change assumptions whenever you want to. So saying 80 now, you might want to change it to 70 or whatever. The point is, you need to start getting comfortable with this template to understand how the math works with retirement. This is why only 1 in 10 South Africans are able to retire. And there's 2 reasons for this. One, they haven't got a clue that there's inflation that has to be factored into the calculation. They assume now that they're earning their money, they're putting away, let's say, 15 to 70% of their income from their pension or whatever. They assume that's going to be sufficient to replace their entire salary at retirement, which is not necessarily the case. The sooner you start, the more realistic that is. But if you start planning for retirement much later, replacing 100% of your income is virtually impossible because the math just does not allow you to put away 15 to 20% of your income to replace 100% if you only got 23 years of planning left to raise 51 million. And we'll get to the recommendations later down the line after we've looked at his current provisions, which will be in the second video. But this is something for you to just play around with, be comfortable with the numbers. Obviously, 80,000 in today's terms is a very good income. Joe might necessarily need to be living off that necessarily. He might just start off with 80,000 because at that stage, ideally, Joe should have no debt. His properties should be paid off if he's got a primary residence and any other property. He should not have any expenses for children if they have finished high school and finished university. Obviously, depends on Joe's circumstances. I'm just going to assume that he's got children and they now have now finished schooling by the time he's got into 65. So in other words, he should have no debt. He should have sufficient money for healthcare to be able to cover living expenses at retirement, obviously adjusting by inflation. If Joe has any hobbies, wants to travel and things like that, need to make provisions for that. There are other models that factor in different scenarios, things like Joe buying a new vehicle every 5 years. I have not factored into this calculator just simply because this is to help educate you to better understand how retirement planning works as a financial model. And I have made a disclaimer here just saying this is for educational personal use. Always speak to a financial advisor when it comes to actually planning for retirement because they've got their own tools. But this mathematically is just being created to help you understand the math behind retirement planning, not just in South Africa, but anywhere in the world. This calculation is done anywhere in the world. It is a universal standard of how to work out how much capital you need and what income you need to receive adjusted by whatever inflation rate that you decide to use. Right, I'm going to go into the video number 2, which is going to be looking at current provisions for Joe. That's a bit of a longer video because there's a lot more to explain, but hopefully this video will help you better understand section one, or step one rather, which is setting your retirement goals so that you can plan a bit better. Thanks for now. I will check you in the next video.